Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Renick. I'm the senior broker and the team lead of Team Renick Real Estate Services. We're part of that great Keller Williams on the Water family based out of Sarasota, serving the west coast of Florida. Today, as in every Friday, I have Mike Mailliard with me. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good.
Mike is the owner agent of MIC Insurance based out here in Longboat. And Mike is here to tell it like it is. So each week we're going to address insurance issues and things we as consumers need to understand before it's too late. When you have a claim and finding out there's a lapse in coverage or there's something missing, that's the wrong time. Before we get into that, though, it is Friday, August 31st. Mike, can you believe summer is almost over?
No.
I was sharing on a video earlier this week that for many folks, the air will change, colors will come. But in Florida, it's going to continue to look the same.
It'll look the same, but the temperatures are getting cooler already.
Right. Last night, the low was actually 76 degrees. So I agree. When it falls below 80 degrees this time of year, we are ready to open the windows, right?
Well, I'm not going to open my windows until January.
So I understand. So we're here to talk about today, how can you be sure your insurance company is in a position to pay off on a major claim? Let's say an entire area gets hit by tornado or hurricane or whatever. How can you protect yourself up front? So, Mike, go ahead.
Well, the real issue at play threatening companies' ability to pay is primarily a multiple storm hurricane year, or in addition to that, the actual exposure of the base homeowner's policy. Today, water damage is our most frequent claim to the power of 10. And water claims with a low capitalized carrier can actually result in a carrier's collapse.
So what can someone do up front to minimize that risk?
Well, I think that it's really incumbent upon the consumer to ask their agent, what is the surplus? What monies does this company have in the bank to pay claims? That is a reflection specifically of their ability to pay ongoing base homeowners coverages, such as water, fire, explosion, etc. Secondarily, then, what is their reinsurance picture in terms of how many storms per year of coverage do they insure? As an example, many companies in Florida insure one storm per year. That means that after the first storm, they do not have reinsurance coverage anymore, and those monies would have to come out of their surplus. So in a big 2-year event, then potentially a number of those companies would fail due to the lack of wind monies to cover their wind risk. Conversely, a very small surplus company, again, has the risk of the ongoing water exposure. A couple of years ago, we had a carrier, I believe, Sunshine State, who failed in October of a no hurricane year. And that was really as a result of a very low surplus and then a number of base homeowners claims which exceeded their ability to pay.
I'm going to ask a question that's going to sound like a leading question, but I mean it sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Given the risk associated with this and the ramifications of finding out after it's too late, is it not better to deal with someone that is what I call an independent agent that sells with many companies versus someone that is tied just to one company?
Well, historically, that may have been true in Florida, but in the defense of the captives today, because their companies may not sell coverage, they're generally allowed to sell other plans. Okay, so
you do want someone that has access to multiple carriers.
And I think that most agencies today will have access to multiple carriers, but I do believe it's incumbent upon the consumer to ask their agent about what is the surplus. Now, in a rating sense, very few carriers in Florida, to the tune of really 2, are rated by AM Best, which is really the industry standard national rater of insurance carriers. Here in Florida, they use what is called a Demotech rating, which my confidence level in that leads to me to say that I believe Sunshine State was rated an A until the day they failed.
Okay.
So
Not necessarily a good metric to follow them.
Well, I think that Demotech, if you're, AM Best is the industry standard, but in fairness, Florida is not a market for that unless you're in a high value home. Although high value homes might be 500,000 and up, that there are carriers that are in the billions of dollars of assets instead of in the tens of millions of dollars of assets. So the market, it is incumbent upon your agent to have a wide portfolio of companies. And in that sense, it's all about the specific agency. I think there are a number of agencies who have access to these carriers. We just need to ask. And in some cases, there is a price to pay for real insurance.
So let me ask this. These videos and live shows are unscripted. We don't rehearse. So I'm going to ask questions, and I don't even know what they are until we get into this. But the one that I have right now is, so let's say that happens, and there's a major incident somewhere in the state, and an insurance company, before it can pay out, bellies up. What options does the consumer have? Is there a government agency that steps in, like in banks, or?
Well, yes. Florida has the Florida Insurance Guarantee Act, which provides between 300 and 500,000 of coverage for a homeowner who's in a failed homeowners insurer situation. Now, historically, the question is, in a funding sense, are the monies there to pay? I'm not going to go down that road, but I will say that in a smaller carrier sense, it is likely that another carrier would pick up their risk, push the risk of the existing loss down to the figure, and then pick up all the companies to try to keep a lack of disruption in the marketplace.
We've seen cases in the past years after a major incident where carriers have left Florida. Is that correct?
Oh, of course. Now that's all, but those days, carriers at that time did not have a sense of what their real risk was.
Okay.
Those days are over. Now there always will be carriers coming in and out of the market because of business choices, but I do not at any point see a mass exodus of carriers happening in our current world, due to the fact that they know the risk that they have. They're the companies that are smart are adequately reinsuring that risk to the tune of 2 to 2.5, some companies up to 3 storms of reinsurance per year. So in that case, the first 3 storms that hit Florida per year, or the 3 biggest storms in a given year, they're paying virtually nothing out of their surplus.
Okay.
This is all covered by the reinsurance carriers. Now, those reinsurers are not one company dumping a bunch of money and risk in Florida. They may be 100 different reinsurance carriers that are splitting up this risk in a percentage basis. So they may be taking different slices of risk in Florida, some in Louisiana, some in Texas, some in the Carolinas. The more slices you have in different locales lead to a better spreading of risk.
Okay.
Because the odds of having a storm in all of those locations in a given year become lessened than having your risk concentrated in Florida. So that's what happened to the companies back in the 90s that left Florida. They had a huge concentration that they could not spread out adequately.
So things are changing.
Have changed.
So let me try to summarize it. So when I go to buy insurance, it's not just trying to get the best price. It's trying to get, and it isn't just trying to get the best price for the coverage. It really comes down to trying to get the best price for the coverage with a company that'll be around to pay. Does that make sense?
I think we start with having a company that can pay, and then we evaluate, do they have the internal coverages that would demand that they pay, such as wind-driven rain and no water damage $10,000 exclusion. So can they pay? Will they be obligated to pay? These are the first 2 questions that we have to ask ourselves about the insurance company that we're spending a lot of money on, but conversely, they're carrying a great deal of risk on our behalf.
So let me summarize this way. I'm not going to, and I'm going to speak to consumer here, people that buy insurance policies. I'm not going to pretend I understand the intricacies. In fact, I don't want to understand. The key is I have trust in my insurance agent. I am confident that him and his team will do the right things. We do ask questions at renewal time and things like that, but it really comes down to the partnership, and that's what we talk about in everything that we do. You need to be working with an insurance agent and company that you trust. They need to be there and be responsive for you when you need something. And you've got to ask some questions from a learning perspective, but at the end of the day, they need to understand one fact. If there is a claim, and we don't want a claim, but if there is, we don't want any surprises. Is that a fair expectation?
Yes.
Excellent.
It is.
Anything else you'd like to share, Mike?
The more knowledge you gain, the better consumer you are.
And that's why we bring these shows to you every Friday morning. Now, next week, and it's tentative, I haven't shared this with Mike, I start, at least I have a summons to appear for jury duty on Wednesday. Whether that's going to happen or not, I see that smile on your face. Whether I'm going to be kept or I get to go home for good behavior, I'm not sure how that works. But I used a get out of jury duty play a few weeks ago when I was out of town. So this one is not going to happen. But we'd like to schedule. We want to be back if we possibly can next Friday morning at 9:30. The topic is flood insurance, federal versus private. And we've touched on that in the past, but things are changing by the minute. And we'd like to bring you up to date with the latest happenings. Is that a good plan for next week?
Very good.
Mike, I really want to thank you again. Do you have any special plans for the weekend?
Work, work, work. Children, grandchildren.
So it's the labor of love, correct?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. Mike, thank you.
Thanks.
Hang on.